Hi.
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is John. Next to me we have Mariana.
Hi.
And we have Stefan from Qlouder.
Hi.
So nice of you to join us today. This is a second webinar in a series of webinars that Google is organizing together with partners. And today we're going to cover the very cool subject of Firebase. We will also hear from Frank van Puffelen, who is our colleague joining from the US. And actually we pre-recorded the video because he couldn't be here due to the time difference. And Stefan is going to cover some interesting topics about Firebase as well. So we hope you enjoy this webinar.
If you can just bear with us, you should see the video now. And let's give you some volume as well.
And as product manager, you must be pretty excited about that. Can you maybe elaborate on where you guys are, maybe for people that not necessarily know Firebase, where you're coming from, but especially where you are today with all those new functions?
Sure. And thanks for having me, by the way. It's a pleasure to get up early to speak to a Dutch audience. Let's see if I can share my screen quickly here. So I will tell a bit about the history because not everyone might know about Firebase. So we started about 4.5 years ago, maybe slightly less, and we released our first simple idea to the world, which was a real-time database. And it was extremely unique at the time. We had this concept of sharing state. So with most databases, you build a query, you fire it to the server, and you wait for a response. With our database, we wanted to make this simpler. So instead of doing a request-response model, we wanted a shared state that's automatically synchronized. And we sort of thought of it as the Google Docs for app developers. So if today you would build Google Docs, you probably build it on Firebase. That's not the case because back then Firebase wasn't part of Google yet, and also Google Docs predates Firebase by quite a few years. But our logic is that if we have a JSON tree in the cloud, and all the clients are looking at the same JSON tree, whenever one of them makes a change to some data, all the other clients see that change instantly. And we do that through a single consistent API. And yeah, that was our original plan. It was a relatively small API that we made, and that made a huge impact. So we released that over 4 years ago, and we simply went from there. So over the time until we joined Google, we added some features. We added authentication. Because essentially what we tell people to do is to remove the middleware. So in the classic application architecture, you have the app. You have the database, and in between sits an application server, and we remove the application server from the picture. But that leaves all kinds of considerations that you would normally have or put on the application server. Yeah, it leaves them on either the app or the database. So a lot of the business logic is moved on to the app itself. But what do you do with things that you cannot put in the app, like security and authentication? So those we add features for. So we added security to the database. And we added authentication as a service, and also to the API. And that led to pretty much a offering on which you could build single-page applications easily. So we released lots of bindings. The most popular one was for Angular. So Angular Fire is one of our best-known bindings. And we started promoting the serverless logic. You don't need a server to build a single-page app. Which led to interesting questions from developers, but then where do I upload my HTML and JavaScript? And that was a good point. We forgot about that one, so that made us introduce Firebase hosting, which is probably the world's simplest hosting product. It's really as simple as it can come. Around that time, we saw tons of uptake, both in app usage, but mobile also started becoming more interesting. So when we joined Google, we had a lot of talks about how can we actually grow this further? How can we take this logic of building a pure client-side app and add more to it? That's when the outside world might have noticed that we went relatively quiet for a while until Google I/O this year, when we released new Firebase. And that now added a ton of features. So here you see them in a small circle. We actually have some better pictures for it later. But essentially what we've done is we've taken the Firebase logic of making simple things simple, providing a single consistent API across all the platforms that we support, and we added a lot of functionality to it that you need to build mobile applications. So we added free analytics, we added crash reporting, well, and a lot of other features that we'll probably get to through the rest of our talk.
Excellent. Can I just mention one thing? You kind of glanced over it, but the whole authentication and hosting part, I think that's still pretty exciting. Although we've got 12 other very exciting new options as well. But I think what makes it really easy, or what we like about Firebase, because a lot of the stuff that we do is web-based, is the options that we have with authentication. Besides the regular Google authentication, which you might expect from a Google product, although you guys didn't start out as a Google product, as you just mentioned. But it also just it opens up web development, or it makes web development easy for authentication integration with other platforms like GitHub, Twitter, and of course Facebook. But also with the username and password logic that you otherwise have to build yourself for the majority of applications, and that's just out of the box. And even with the hosting, I think you're selling that a bit short, Frank. That's my opinion. But the hosting part, I think, is pretty awesome because you guys are HTTPS. There's an SSL certificate in there, so it's a pretty cool hosting solution. And especially if you're building business apps, or you're building apps that have a certain growth, or an app or a web app that's being accompanied by mobile native apps, then I think the hosting that you guys offer together with the authentication really creates a very strong platform. That's even before we go into the other cool stuff. So I just wanted to get that in.
No, perfect. I actually wonder, do you often find yourself in projects where you use Firebase authentication? Do you also use custom authentication?
Actually, I think most of the projects that we do, we use the Firebase authentication. So or the options that Firebase offers for authentication. So we use Google authentication in that, and Facebook, and obviously the user and password authentication. And just combining that and offering that to the users of our applications, our web applications, it really makes a lot of sense, and it really makes it very easy for our developers. And then with some of the new features that were recently added, in where you now can start combining those three authentication models, where the user might have a Google login, might even have a username and password and a Facebook login. You can just start combining that and create a one user profile that goes across all these different logins. So that's we're as a developer, we're very pleased with that, and it's a feature that. It deserves some attention. So, but I think the point got across.
No, it definitely does. It was actually one of the features that when we announced it at I/O, right? Firebase authentication is an existing feature that we added some things to, and this was the one where first we got a round of applause from existing Firebase developers. This was a long-wanted feature, of course. Because account linking not only allows you to use your same, or your Google account and Facebook account being the same developers or the same user to Firebase, sorry. It also allows for what we call upgradable anonymous accounts. So if you have a shopping cart application, then the user doesn't immediately want to sign in, but they already want to add items to the shopping cart. You can do that with Firebase anonymous authentication, which really is, we give you an ID. We don't know who you are, but we know that you are you. And then as they get closer to the checkout, you can give them the option to sign in with their existing social accounts, so Google, Facebook, GitHub, or Twitter. And we will link those accounts together. So this removes a lot of friction that people might otherwise see for checkout experiences in mobile apps and websites.
Definitely, and as you mentioned, it's causing a very smooth transition from anonymous to authenticated to actually a paying customer. So it's a very nice model.
Yeah.
So with the before we dive into the other stuff, I'm just trying to put that off and build the tension here. Can you tell us a bit more about the Can you tell us a bit more? You mentioned Firebase is a JSON database. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. Let me see what's the easiest way to tell you about it. Let's see what we have here. So this is the Firebase website. I'll actually go to home quickly. So we divide the products into three pillars: develop, grow, earn, and underneath all of that we have Firebase Analytics, free and unlimited. Let's see what we say about the database here. I'm mostly looking for a good picture, by the way. That's the only reason I'm looking for it. Let's do, it doesn't really matter too much. So it's a JSON tree in the cloud. So if you've ever done web development, or to be honest, most other types of development nowadays, you've seen JSON. JSON is a JavaScript object notation. It's really just a tree that you put in a string. And we store that tree in the cloud. And I often say that it's a tree of values. So you might be familiar with key value stores. We are a tree value store. So it's a hierarchical key. And that makes us really different from relational databases because we don't do logic of tables, but also from many other NoSQL databases. So if you have a document store, for example, then quite often you work with documents that go into categories or something, that all the documents in there are the same. And with the Firebase database, we don't force you into that model. So we allow for very flexible data modeling. It's really whatever you put in the tree. It's schemaless, so you can model however you want. But you typically will, in your tree, want to have lists of similarly formatted nodes. And that's also one of the early hurdles that people might encounter when learning about Firebase is the flexibility of the database. Also makes it trickier to get started with at times.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We see that with our developers as well. That initially you go, oh yeah, it's just a single JSON structure that we have, and then it turns out that you have to actually do a bit more about it and come up with a structure. But it's actually a very good and straightforward structure that once you understand the structure, it makes a lot of sense. In that structure, when you were just scrolling, there were some stuff.
I was looking up my slides from my I/O session because I know I have a good slide in there about data structure. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
By the way, for the people that haven't seen it yet, if you want to learn more about Firebase, well, more than or if this is not enough in this session and you're totally fired up about Firebase, definitely go and check out the recording on the Zero to App presentation. It's a really awesome presentation about the different platforms that Firebase supports and how you can actually really easily build an application. So, sorry for doing that plug, Frank.
No. That was probably my plug to do, but totally fine. We had fun doing that session. It's the biggest stage we've been on, and it was definitely very, very exciting to code 3 apps at the same time. This is actually a good outline of what a data model might look like in Firebase. So as you see, it's a tree, and you see that we have a node called chat. This was actually from the app that we built at I/O in our 0 to M session. And under that, we have a list of messages, and for each message, we keep 2 properties: the name of the user who sent the message and the text of the message that he sent. So you see that we could model this in any way. If we wanted to do multiple chat rooms, then we would probably have something here that identifies the chat room, like general. Oh, I cannot type apparently at the moment, but like general or something like that. You can figure out what how you want to model your data very flexibly. But typically, at some point, you will switch to and from here on, it's a list of this structure. And that's a very common model with Firebase, and that also allows you to use our API most efficiently in your app, because then you suddenly can see, okay, now tell me whenever a new chat message is added under the chat node. And you're gonna, in your app, right, if you have an Android app, you're gonna get the data for the new chat message and show it on the screen. And you want each message to be the same, because otherwise, how are you gonna show it on the screen? But if you're building a backend service, for example, you might not care that much about that all messages are the same. You might do a very generic data processing model.
One of the things that we actually learned by building the data structure, by building data structures in more complex applications, is that it's very appealing to just start building it and then build it as you go. But with every good application, the developers quickly find out that it actually does require some more thought, and that you actually have to spend some time going through the model that you're defining because of the security and the authentication rules that you have. Because obviously we can limit who has access to the application. But I think one of the very nice features is that based on the information that you put in a database and some of the structures that we have, the security model that Firebase has allows you to actually set very specific access rights on a node or on a value node by itself. So that's a pretty cool feature, but it also requires some planning ahead of the application. That's one of the observations that we have on this, but it's pretty good for sure.
So it's a very good point. So what we often see indeed is that people start with a very flexible data model and just sort of figure it out as they go along. And at some point, when you are pretty certain about your data model, you need to start nailing it down. You need to start actually locking it down. And that's where the security rules come in, for example. I'm quickly showing in the guides where we are. So I went to docs, now I go to guides. In here, we have the real-time database, and we have an entire section where we actually explain the security model for the database. How you can do user authorization, or authentication, sorry, and then authorized users only. So we do data validation, and we walk you through all of that. There's also a video from, again, Google I/O. It's the key to your Firebase security by Jacob Wenger, and that is a great introduction to security, both for the real-time database and for our new Firebase storage product. So we also now can do file storage, and we have a similar yet still slightly different security model for that. The two are actually it's mostly a syntactic difference. In the way they work, they are very similar. You declare what must exist on a certain level, in this case in your JSON tree, but when it comes to file storage, you say, okay, you can only have JPEG files in this directory, they can never be larger than 1 megabyte. All kinds of things that matter to your application. And that's, of course, when you don't have a middle tier in your application anymore, that's how you ensure that your business rules are enforced on the server.
This is actually a pretty good bridge, I think, with some of the stuff that you mentioned, the new storage features that there are, to start talking about some of the new features that Firebase introduced at I/O. I'm going to ask you a question that you're not going to like, but what do you think is what to your personal opinion, if you're allowed to give that, is the coolest feature of Firebase right now?
Ooh, this is tricky. This is tricky. I like a lot of them, I must admit. But I'll also be honest. The one that I use mostly is Firebase Storage, simply because it's the easiest step up from all the offerings we already had. It's essentially what we had been missing for years. So for me, that one is a very easy step up. And you see, right, Firebase traditionally, if you've ever seen a Firebase demo, we build chat apps. Now we build chat apps with pictures in them. And it's actually quite surprising if you look at what people can build that way. This morning somebody was asking about what can I do with Firebase, right? It sounds magical. How can I see that it's real? Okay. This is a Firebase built chat app. It's completely client-side only. I'm not sure why they're upside down. And it's a picture sharing app. It's called Friendly Pics. You can go there, friendly-pics.com. And it's a progressive web app. And you can see all the cool things that we do here. You see lots of Googlers, by the way, in these pictures. Oh, including this one is really awesome. David East and Timothy Jordan, two of our video celebrities, are doing fun stuff here. But this is one of those examples that would have been a lot more difficult before we released the new Firebase at I/O, because there's a lot more that we can do now that you can store files. This definitely uses a lot of our features. So that's my personal favorite, but I have a few more actually that I really like. Let me see. So analytics is at the core of everything, but given that most of the apps I build never go to the Play Store or App Store, I don't use it a lot myself. It's normally later in the life cycle of your app, and remember we now go through all three pillars. It's develop, grow, earn. I mostly work in the develop pillar. So you can see that the top 4 in this essentially are top 5 even, are pretty much in every project that I use. So cloud messaging is what used to be called Google Cloud Messaging, now Firebase Cloud Messaging. It's a new version of a product you know already, and it helps you to deliver messages, well, as it says, across platforms. Let's see, authentication we already covered, but keep in mind that we re-implemented Firebase Authentication in this year's release to allow for things like account linking, but also a lot of other features you might see. One of the cool things there is that we actually now also offer headful authentication with an open source library. So there's Firebase UI, an open source library we released last year, and there's now an entire flow for headful authentication in there. It's pretty cool. Storage I covered.
You mentioned that you've done some rebuilds on authentication. There are some other rebuilds in certain areas as well. Does that mean that my existing Firebase application, that I need to rebuild that or file that, or can I? Because I believe, or when I look at the Firebase console, you actually change that as well. There.
Oh yeah.
There. Is there any impact on my existing application?
No. On your existing application, no, not based on this new release. If there are, by the way, always follow us on Twitter or on our Firebase Talk mailing list Google group, because there we might announce things that may break. But in general, we are very, very careful in introducing breaking changes. So the new Firebase is actually a completely new major version, and but the existing SDKs will stay working. So nobody, when we announced this during the keynote, nobody's absolutely broke. And that is good. But of course, we did announce a new, sorry, let me take a few steps back. So what we hope is that people will migrate over because of all the features that we offer. And there are some great features in here, and if you want to use those, you will need to upgrade your app. But even if you don't, you can already take advantage of our new simplified pricing model. So we went from all the fixed price tiers to a simpler free-tier model. Our Spark plan is now free, and that means that if you have an existing domain name, we will host it on our secure CDN, SSL CDN for free. We will add you to our certificates. And you won't have to pay for that. So that used to be I think $5 a month plan. That's now free. Our fixed price tier is now called Flame. It's $25 a month, and it has a fixed price, fixed quota. And we have, for the first time, a metered plan, a pay-as-you-go plan. And that's actually a first, and where a feature is based on Google Cloud products. We do pass-through pricing, so we don't have anything on top of that. And keep in mind, you will see that the list of paid features is fairly short. Most of the features that we release are free to use without limits. So things like analytics, crash reporting, what others are there? Invites, cloud messaging are all free without limits. These are the only paid features. And we try to stick to the cloud pricing model there. So if, for example, you have an existing app and you would like to start using the new Firebase because you like the new pricing, we have a migration guide for you. So let me quickly show. It's a bit slower than here than it probably is on your system. But if you go to support guides under the support section, you will find that we have migration guides for Android, iOS, and web. Let's say that you're a web developer, because I know a lot of people in Hong Kong. This steps you through it. One of the most important things when we were writing these apps is that you can already import into the new Firebase console and the new pricing model without changing your code. So all this will do is it will essentially make you part of the new console, and it will move your users over. So your users will then be using the new Firebase authentication model. But for probably 99% of the applications, that means there's no change needed. The format in which we store the user IDs is slightly different, so that might affect you. But for 99% it doesn't, and that means that it's as simple as going to the Firebase console and clicking import. We actually show it. I won't do an import because I want to make sure that I have something to do when I need more testing. But for example, which one was one of mine? I think FireChat probably started from an existing Firebase.com project, and I definitely have others here too. Here's our 02 app from Gaio demo that I did, by the way. So if you have more projects, you will see them projects currently at Firebase.com, and you will be able to import them there. I don't have any here because I'm running under a different account, I see.
Yep. True. Which some of you yours? Can we maybe dive those best? I'm interesting stuff. A bit of a echo as well. But there's some interesting stuff with the I think with the remote config and crash reporting in test lab. I think most people actually already, if you're an Android developer, you're probably already familiar with cloud messaging and things like that. But the stuff like remote config and test lab, they're actually pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah, they are. The remote config was one of the surprises for me personally, because I thought that it was a very small feature and that I didn't really get why people would use it. When we were testing the new Firebase with partners, boy, was I surprised, because all of them really wanted to use remote config, because it allows you to change the app without redeploying a new version, so without doing a new update. And you typically use it to tweak things in your app after it's been deployed. So things like, let's see, segmentation, what people see in the app, which buttons are available to them. A lot of people want to use this for A/B testing. We're actually considering adding that as a specific feature to remote config, but it's great for that. And it's essentially a set of configuration variables that you can deploy with the app, but then also still update afterwards through our web console. And that's a great feature. The test lab and crash reporting, I think when we were doing one of our own internal hackathons here at Google, the best promotion I can give for it is one of our developers who said, yeah, the only testing he'd done was that he deployed it in test lab, where the app is run on real physical Android devices and put through tests by robo-tests. So you can do instrumented tests where you write a script, or a robo-test where it's just essentially a bunch of monkeys clicking buttons. That's the only testing he'd done, and then he'd seen all the problems through crash reporting. So he could see which one the monkeys were hitting most frequently. It was a great testament for how you can use this combination. You can see that you almost follow them top to bottom, right? That where remote config and test lab are somewhat later in your development cycle. As you're nearing release and you start thinking of how are you going to make sure that the quality is up to par, how are you going to make sure that you can still make the changes after you release that you're not really certain if you've got the values right. So overall, great products to add to your development.
Absolutely. Some of the feedback that I'm hearing from other developers as well, not only from my team, but other developers and customers that I speak to, or just other developers out there in the field, they're really excited to see this coming, along with the storage and things that we already discussed. I think what is nice about this now is that Firebase is actually moving from the development point, and we're actually going into an area where we see grow and what you guys call grow and earn. And I told some of my customers about this, and this is actually triggering them more than all the technical stuff that we can do, especially if you're talking to the business end of things. And one of the things that really triggered a lot of thought and ideas are the dynamic links in the invites, which I think both are pretty cool features. Maybe you can elaborate on those two a bit more.
For sure. So dynamic links allow you to, it really goes hand in hand, all of these, but dynamic links allow you to deep link into your app. So you can send users a link through either messaging or through email, and you can take them directly to the screen in your app that you want them to go to. So in classic Firebase logic, if we have a chat app, you can take them directly to the chat room that you want them to be in. But probably if you are doing an e-commerce site, you have better targets there. Invites are a way to actually reach out to, so allow the users of your app to reach out to their friends and invite them to use the same app. And both of these are great ways to broaden the reach of your app, right, to grow the user base. Combined with things like app indexing, where it simply becomes easier to discover things in the application, and AdWords, which means that you go out into the Google network and start acquiring users there. To be honest, these are all tools that once your app becomes somewhat successful, you use to broaden that success, to make it a bigger thing. Notifications are actually a very, so Firebase notifications is with the Firebase cloud messaging, and it's really a re-engagement. So you can reach out to your existing users through a web console and tell them about new things that might get them back into your application.
Do these notifications, they kind of show up in your notification bar on your Android phone and things like that? Is
that comes from iOS?
Yeah, I was explaining this to some other people the other day, and I hope I did it correctly, but the way I explained it is that the cloud messaging, or the Firebase cloud messaging functions that there are, those are actually something that the developer has to do, and the notifications is something that the people that are involved in growing the application, so the people from the business side, can actually start using, combined with, for example, analytics to target messages to a specific audience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You do audience targeting or specific user targeting to try to get them to interact with your application more. And it's through a web dashboard, it ties into analytics, and potentially through BigQuery also to custom audience segmentation. And it's a great feature that is indeed a different developer user base for Google Cloud Messaging, or now Firebase Cloud Messaging. Sorry.
I think a lot of the things that we're seeing is actually around analytics, and I think we still got a few minutes left in this presentation. So can we maybe discuss some more of the analytics features, because I think they're pretty cool. If I
That's the part that I'm most familiar with.
Yeah. If I understand correctly, this is something that was pretty much built up from the beginning, and it allows you now to have like deep integration of analytics into your application without having to resort to third-party tools and doing a lot of setups and going through hoops and all that, just to get this into the just to get it into your application.
Yeah. No, it's literally what we did. We went to the Google Analytics team and we told them, look, if you were now to start building analytics for mobile, how would you do that? And they came with this story, and then we said, well, do you want to do that for Firebase? And they said yes, and that's how Firebase Analytics came about. So it's done by the team that knows analytics well, but now they were purely focused on doing mobile analytics. So gone are the page views, gone are other things that are not relevant in the mobile world anymore. And so you now have a very lean, targeted analytics engine purely for mobile. And yeah, that allows them to really clean up how the API works, while still maintaining the scalability that Google Analytics is known for, of course.
If we're building a multi-platform app, so we're building an application that runs on Android and on iOS, and maybe on the web as well, I can use Firebase Analytics for all three platforms, or should I use the regular Google Analytics for the web, and then the Firebase Analytics for the mobile app, and then just bringing it all together in BigQuery?
Yeah. So Firebase Analytics is native mobile only, so Android and iOS. Not for web, although there is some internal discussion. If you want to tie them together, actually you see the list here with the integration points. And you already mentioned BigQuery, which is my favorite integration point. But one that I now see a lot about also is Google Tag Manager, which is apparently the natural integration already for the two. I need to read into this, so I'm not an expert at this one at all yet. But the product manager for Google Analytics keeps repeating that Tag Manager is the way you can integrate it with that. So we all need to look into that one a bit more.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think by adding analytics to this as well, and then with all the other changes that you guys done to Firebase, I think Firebase is now really becoming a very solid mobile development platform for the a mobile development platform. Period. I was going to say for the Google product line, but it's also on supporting Android and iOS and the like. With that, I think you guys made a great step forward from just being a real-time database to really being a very comprehensive platform. So, in my opinion, you guys have done a very, very great job. And As you said, there's a lot of information out there, and I've been looking at, obviously attended some of the I.O. sessions in person, but all the sessions I missed, I actually looked at them online, and I think I would definitely urge people to actually go in and go to YouTube, go to the developer channel on YouTube, and just check out this I.O. Firebase talks, because they're really excellent, and there's some very good insights, and there's a lot of you can definitely see all the effort that Firebase put into creating this product. So.
Definitely. I need to run out quickly here. I quickly want to repeat, so we have GCP Next in, I think, 2 weeks in Amsterdam. Do go there. There's a great talk from Sarah about Firebase. With that, I need to run. Mariana, can you pick up?
Thank you so much, Frank. And we'll
guys, have a great rest of the night. Bye-bye.
Have a great day ahead. Bye. I just would like to clarify that Next is actually next week here in Amsterdam. So if you would like to join, it's a very lengthy URL. So just type Next Amsterdam 2016 and register. We would love to see you there. To meet us in person, to meet Qlouder in person, to learn more about our products as well as Firebase. My name is Mariana. I'm part of the Cloud Platform team here in Amsterdam, so I would like to thank you for joining. And before we finish, I would like to tell you that we have another webinar as a follow-up on this one, and also in-person event here in our office in Amsterdam, and we would love to meet you in person. So any feedback that you have on this webinar, or maybe some questions that you still had and we didn't answer during the webinar, please send them to marianad@google.com or stefan@qlouder.com. Qlouder, Q louder. It's a very common mistake on this one, so just to make sure. And yeah, this is it from me. Thanks for joining. Also, I think Stefan maybe.
No, I think you mentioned most of the important stuff. Like next, the upcoming other webinars, we're going to do a whole series, and there's going to be the in-person event. Yeah, just make sure that you check the Qlouder website for more information on that. It's qlouder.com with a Q. Don't say Qlouder, it's Qlouder. Yeah. Just kidding. Go with whatever you want. Just look at the website to get some more details. For the people that are interested in Firebase, I already mentioned the Firebase sessions the Firebase sessions that were given at I/O. If you have more direct questions, or if you want to know more about Firebase on how you can apply it in your projects, just reach out to us. More than happy to talk to you guys about it. And if there are any questions that you need answered, being a Firebase expert, being part of the Firebase expert program, I should be able to answer those. And if I can't, I'm definitely able to reach out to the right people in the Firebase team. So for the people that are already sending questions ahead of the webinar, I hope we answered most of them. If there's any other questions, just please keep them coming. Use the link that was provided, or just send emails to info@qlouder.com, or tweet us, or find us on Google+.
Or join your free consultation hours.
Absolutely, do that as well. Yeah, we definitely invite everybody to reach out to us if you have any questions, and then join us in our joining the conversation. All right.
Great. You're going to receive a recording of the video if you would just like to watch it again and go through some of the points that we discussed. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Bye. Bye.